There are a couple of major themes that kind of get played out through the entire book, but one of the biggest ones is what he calls medicine 2.0 versus 3.0. What is that? What is he talking about there?
In looking at medicine 1.0, 2.0, 3.0 within the book, that just gives us basically a history of all disease treatment, prevention, management. It shows us essentially the history of how we view disease. It gives the reader context of all those sorts of things.
Right.
So for some, they might be arbitrary distinction, and maybe that's part of maybe some of the critiques we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But again, for the sake of storytelling, looking at Med 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, it gives us very nice buckets of where we started, where maybe we look at things like infection prevention and treatment that were, unfortunately killing people very early on in history, the, 1700s, 1800s, even well before that.
Yeah.
He talks about things like surgical techniques and antiseptic techniques and these things that now seem very mundane to us or very common in medical treatment and surgeries. But back then, they were groundbreaking discoveries. And then from 1.0 to 2.0, for example, we look at the early treatments and early interventions for cardiovascular disease and sort of the invention of many medical treatment and pharmacologic treatments that are being used up until this point. And looking into medicine 3.0 is where he proposes is this shift, not necessarily saying that he invented it, but also this version of proactive healthcare that looks at how are we going to treat the diseases that we still don't have really a great grip on, like we do infections and garbing and antiseptic techniques and such. So these are things like, what we'll talk about, the more of the silent killers, cardiovascular disease, these disease processes that are occurring over a long period of time. How do we treat them? How do we treat them proactively versus the medicine 2.0 techniques of sort of treating them when it's too late, so to speak.
Yeah, he talks about 2.0 being really good at acute care and prolonging life or preventing death. Mm-hmm. That there were some really fantastic stats about, we don't, the number of people dying from heart attacks has been cut in half in the last 40 years or something like that. And things that we can keep you from dying pretty consistently. We have a lot of really good tools, and that's what he calls medicine 2.0.
Right.
Medicine 3.0 being more about how do we stop getting to that point where you need that kind of care, because that's what makes for a less enjoyable old age. This is a major point. Is he's constantly trying to get people to think more in terms of risk reduction than in terms of how do we fix the thing once it's broken. And that actually would bring me nicely to one of my favorite moments in the book, which is really early on when he talks about the difference between the financial world and the medical world and what drove him away and then what brought him back. He says, "My detour into the world of consulting came to an end, but it opened my eyes to a huge blind spot in medicine. And that is the understanding of risk. In finance and banking, understanding risk is key to survival. Great investors do not take on risk blindly. They do so with a thorough knowledge of both risk and reward. The study of credit risk is a science, albeit an imperfect one, as I learned with the banks. While risk is obviously also important in medicine, the medical profession often approaches risk more emotionally than analytically." Later on, he says, "Risk is not something to be avoided at all costs. Rather, it's something we need to understand, analyze, and work with. Every single thing we do in medicine and in life is based on some calculation of risk versus reward. Did you eat a salad from Whole Foods for lunch? There's a small chance there could have been E. coli on the greens. Did you drive to Whole Foods to get it? Also risky, but on balance, that salad is probably good for you." I love that distinction, that acknowledgement that there is risk in everything. And part of the point of this is, where do we consciously take risks because the reward, the payoff is better, right? We're trying to approach this asymmetrically so that we get a bigger reward than the risk, like eating a salad or lifting weights. You could hurt your shoulder, but you're definitely going to be healthier overall.